Hello everyone, welcome back to Painting Crafty, and today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to paint and create this whimsical style flying pig. Let's bring a little magic to the page today with this watercolor flying pig, complete with butterfly wings and blooms covering her body. She's flying really high over kind of a storybook hills. It's a super fun project to create. I'm going to show you some simple drawing steps of how you can draw her if you would like to draw, but for those who would rather just trace and paint, I do have a sketchbook membership. There you get the different sizes. These are all three different. This is great for tags. This is the card size, which I'm going to be painting for. And if you want a larger size to perhaps even paint it on canvas using acrylic paints, that could work for that too. I'm going to have a link down in the description box for that, a link for my sketchbook membership. And I wanted to say a special thank you to all my members who have joined. I so appreciate you supporting my channel that way. Now this little gal is drawn on watercolor paper. I'm using the Canson brand watercolor to create her. And then for her wings, I used some of the butterfly wings that we created about a couple weeks ago on my channel. I did a butterfly video. And if you do your wings, make sure you make copies of them, your colorful watercolor paintings. And that makes great fodder for your journals or your mixed media pieces. So definitely take some time, make some copies so you can use them again. And I just cut them out and put them right on there. This is also going to have a little bit of color pencils on there to add some of the color. Well, let's do a quick little drawing step of how to draw this pig. I wanted to show you basically how you can make the body style. The body style is you're going to just go ahead and make a bean shape. So a shape that kind of looks like this is what that is. So it's going to have a dip, and this would be the back side of your piggy. Now your legs are going to be flying, so she's going to have legs that are going to come out. Put your legs in like that, then you can go ahead and further draw them a little bit more. And the piggy's little snout is just a gentle upside down triangle shape. You're going to go ahead and connect it then like that and make your forehead come out. Piggies have bigger ears, so they're going to be triangle ears that come like this down into the side of the head. You're going to come across and up. I did drew it so that you could see the back side of that ear. Now when you do the next one, your ear is not going to be any taller than this one, but you're only going to see just a partial. You could see a little bit of the inside if you wanted to. Pigs have little eyes, so I'm just going to do an upside down, like sad face shape with a little bit of eyelashes. She's going to have big old round holes in her nose, and you can give a big smile face if you would like to. And then a curly tail. So the curly tail is going to come around and touch like that, come up and around and touch. And that's how it works out that way. And then you can add whatever designs you wanted to add inside of the middle. Now, for those who wanted those tracers, go ahead and click on that link in the description box if you'd rather just trace and paint. Well, let's get started. I can't wait to show you how I created this whimsical style flying pig with butterfly wings and a whole bunch of cute flowers. To start out, I'm going to add a little water to my watercolor sets with this little mini mister bottle. It works perfect for adding a little water to your sets. I'm mostly going to be using the watercolor in that blue box because it has some pastel colors that I don't have in my other set. The pastel colors are colors that have a little bit of white gouache mixed in with the tint, and it's going to create those soft shades of the peach and the pink. I'm first going to start out with a peach color, and I'm basically brushing it pretty much over all of my pig. I'm not too worried about the flower areas because those colors are going to be a lot darker. Once I had the peach on, I picked up a light shade of pink in my set, and I brushed that over my piggy, mostly underneath the belly area, on the top of the back, around basically the outsides. And because that peach is still wet and I add the pink on, those colors are going to blend softly and naturally on their own. My pink color is still wet, but I'm going to choose the shade that's the next darker shade of pink in my set, and that's what I'm going to use to create the darker parts of the pink. I'm going to be adding that to her front of her chest, a little bit more on the back, some more in her ear, and in the inside of her noses, and I'm going to add that darker pink to the legs that are on the back side of her body. I'm also going to use it for her cheek, and here I'm just tapping in the color. You can see that I have a lot more pigment. I give it a tap with my finger. It's one way to blend some color. You can always give it a tap with your finger. If you have a lot of water on there and adding that darker color, you can end up with more of a bloom type of look with a harsher line. And that way you can go ahead and soften that color a little bit. I'm going to be adding some clear water on there to even soften that cheek just a little bit more. Here you see me putting on some different greens for the grasses of the hillsides. Basically just choose 3 different greens that you might like and add those colors on. Here I've rinsed my brush off and then squeezed the water out, and I'm coming in and I'm tickling the edges of that pink cheek just to soften the little lines so I'm not getting hard dry lines. Now that my paint has had just a little bit more time to dry, I can see where I need to add some more of the dark pink to add more of the depth of the shadows. Watercolor always dries slightly lighter, so what it looks like when it's wet, it's not going to look that dark when it's dry. So this is that dance you're going to walk in between of adding the layers. But with watercolor, that's the most important step, is adding the layers, taking the time to add that next layer. Here I've rinsed my brush out and again taken the water off and then tickling those edges and blending my colors together so I don't have any really hard dry lines. For my little tail, I did end up switching down to a size 6 brush just to be able to add my color just to more in the detail of the tail. When doing the legs, you do need to add a little bit more shadow in that back leg so it gives that more dimension of that leg is farther back. When I'm putting the line detail on the legs, I also want to make sure that the legs that are in the front don't have the line of the belly that goes all the way across. The ones that are behind have the line that crosses over them from the body, but the ones in the front, those lines need to be staying open, and then that's going to give it more of a feeling that those legs are in the front and the other ones are in the back. My paint has had a little bit more time to dry again, so I'm adding another layer of the dark shadows. And I'm doing that dance of cleaning off my brush with some clear water, squeezing it, and then tickling the edges to soften the colors. Once I got that layer on, I went down to the bottom then again to add some more layers to my trees and my hillsides and my houses. Often when I do my paintings, when I'm making them, I like to carry some of the colors that I've used up above to down below. So I'm going to make the houses a similar color to what I painted my pig. So I'm going to have pink houses. I used red for my flowers, so I'm going to be adding some red to the roof lines, and I gave them some orange in my body and those little houses too. I wanted them to be kind of more of whimsical style, kind of like little cottages that are sitting on a storybook hill. So I wanted to add some playful colors to my houses. I had given my paper enough time to dry that I could go ahead and start my flowers. If you start too soon, watercolor always wants to flow wherever your paper is wet. So if I come in and paint my flowers while my piggy is wet, those colors are really going to blend out into the body of the pig. And I want them to stay inside of my flowers. So I need to make sure that my pig is fairly dry, the body, before I start those detail elements of the flowers. Now this is where you get to be as creative as you want to be. I was going to be picking up a little bit of the turquoise and some red, and then a variety of greens. I was going to be adding a little bit of purple on my pig as well, because the wings that I had cut out from my butterfly wings had some purple and some blues in there. So I wanted to make sure I added some of those colors as well into my body of my pig. For the greens, I just chose a medium shade of green. Hooker's green is one of my favorite greens to use. If you buy a set of watercolor and you're going to bump up into your quality of paints, Hooker green is a color that you will use often, and so I strongly suggest buying a set that has that color in it. It's going to take a few layers of color to get it right for your pig as well. So you're going to need those colors to dry and then come back in and see where you need to bump up the colors to strengthen those colors. Here I'm adding the little red roofs to my house. I'm going to be adding some detail in the end too, using a little bit of white gesso as my white color that I'm putting over the top. I'm going to be adding some white decorative marks that way. I always save my backgrounds until last. I know not everybody does, but that's the way I prefer to do my backgrounds. I added some clear water first to the background, and I chose a spot of where it was wouldn't look too bad if I had a stop and start line. So I chose the front part of the leg and then kind of sort of back by the tail. When you're putting on the blues, and I was using a color called sky blue, your skies are normally darker at the top and then they gradually get lighter as they come down your page. Now, because I added the water and then the paint, it's fairly moist, and I'm using a little bit of toilet paper to create my sky clouds with. That's one of my favorite papers to use. It's because it's soft, you can lightly scrunch it and then just dab it into that wet paint area, and it's going to pick up the paint and make some really pretty cloud images. I basically did the tapping for the clouds just on the very top of my pig and then just gradually layered the colors down below to make them lighter. If you think that your sky is too dark towards the bottom, you can always lay a flat piece of toilet paper down to pick up some color. You want to give your paper a dry at this stage because next step I'm going to do is using my color pencils. This is a Prisma set, but it is a student grade of Prismacolor pencils. I believe I bought mine at Walmart. Even though it is a student grade set, it still has some beautiful colorations of color. There's different levels of color pencils as well. Just like with paint, it's the same thing with color pencils. Color pencils are actually a wax inside, and you want to start out with light pressure and then build your texture as you go. With color pencil, you are going to see the direction that you pull your pencil. So when I was doing the cheek, I did little tiny circles or the figure 8 shapes, so I wouldn't have such a strong line work there. On the flowers, I actually did more of a directional line because I wanted to create more pattern on them. You can also create some circles in there. You can just add even more color. But when I did the cheek, I was doing little soft marks, and I started with a darker pink, and then I added a little bit of light on top. Color pencils also have the unique quality of that the more pressure you put on, the darker or more intense your color is. But if you build up with lots of texture, darkness, color of that wax right away, you're not going to be able to layer any other colors on top because it will resist the next layers. So always start a little lighter with your pressure on your pencils and then build it up as you go. The color pencils work great for adding little details on these watercolor paintings. It's just another way to make some interesting lines on these mixed media pieces. For my dark lines, I was going to be moving to my Micron pens. Micron pens are a permanent ink when they're dry, and I like using the 01 for a lot of my little fine details. The 005 is a smaller tip, but I do find that they kind of get smashed or crushed when going over the watercolor paper. It seems like the slight bumpy texture can ruin that pen nib size. So the 01 is the size I often use when I'm doing my line work. When doing this line work, I like to use more of a sketchy hand motion, so my lines aren't perfect, and I'm okay with them not being exactly the same shape of the pig. So I'm okay if they go out and add a little bit more creative line work. I just like the way that it looks like it has been hand drawn or hand sketched with my dark lines. Now to add a little bit of magic by adding those little paper wings on the top. I'm going to be using a glue stick because my wings were just copied off on copy paper. I want to use a glue that's not too wet, so a glue stick works perfect for this process. I don't often use word stamps. Mostly I just do handwriting, but I had bought the small little set, a new one that I had bought at clearance, and I decided I was going to try that. I did put it down. I didn't get quite an even print all the way across using those little stamps. If you have any tips on what's the best way to stamp lettering, put them in the comments. I'd love to know. I do have quite a few of these little stamps now, so I'd like to be able to use them. To add the little bits of bright white, I was going to be using Liquitex gesso. I like using the gesso with watercolor. It is more opaque and it is not very shiny when it dries, so it works really well for this. The Liquitex gesso I like in particular because of the opacity of it and the shine value. There isn't really any shine when it dries. I'm using a liner brush here to add some fine detail to it. I'm going to be adding some detail on the legs and a little bit on the wings, adding some bright white there, adding a few more dashes and dots and patterns to my houses, and I'm going to use a stylus to go ahead and dip that into my gesso as well and make some dot patterns down at the bottom of the field line to add even a little bit more whimsical nature to that storybook hills. Again, get as creative as you want, add all the patterns. You could even make these houses paper houses and even make it more of a mixed media piece. Well, she's almost done, so let's go ahead and take a look of what she looks like when she's put into a frame. And here she is, looking cute as can be. I love those rosy blush pinks and the bright colored flowers, and those little tiny butterfly wings on top of her chunky body makes me smile every time. If you enjoyed today's tutorial, here's a couple more videos you might want to check out. Leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up if you would, and it really does help my channel grow. Well, thanks for joining me today, and hopefully you'll come back and join me again, and perhaps next time you'll paint right along with me.